will the new right-wing grift, pink slime journalism, con the average Joe? And here it comes. These are right-wing propaganda outlets. Some of them are newspapers. They look like newspapers. They resemble newspapers. They have sports sections and classified ads and obituaries and whatever. It's and recycled news, but they're not really newspapers. They're replacements, shall we say. Since 1996, when Bill Clinton did away with the ownership limits on newspapers, radio stations, and television stations in the United States, over 2,100 local newspapers have gone out of business. It's pretty breathtaking when you think about it. Another large thing that contributed to it was in 1983, Ronald Reagan ending enforcement of our antitrust laws, or largely ending it. And so into this vacuum, these 2,100 missing local newspapers have stepped these, the Columbia Journalism Review refers to as pink slime newspapers. This is an example. This is from an article by the Columbia Journalism Review in the month before the 2022 election. It's about a guy named 22-year-old by the name of Michael Gannett. And he found a copy of the Kane County Reporter in his mailbox. Quote, the paper featured scare stories on crime, COVID, and culture war topics. Teachers are instructing children to be trans, it said, and dangerous murderers would be released without bail under a Democratic plan to reform cash bail, in a double-page spread of mugshots of mostly black men. It was vile stuff, Gannett said, after researching more about the paper online. It particularly struck a chord because Gannett said he felt it questioned his very right to exist as part of the LGBTQ community. He was disgusted by what he saw as racism, really tried to punch down on as many people as possible, he said. The review, the Columbia Journalism Review, one of the premier watchdogs of American media, went on to note that hundreds of thousands of copies of such newspapers, each tweaked to appear local with names like the Chicago City Wire, the West Cook News, the DuPage Policy Journal, the Lake County Gazette, and the Will County Gazette, were distributed across Illinois in the weeks leading up to the election of 2022. They're published by a right-wing activist and funded by an Illinois right-wing billionaire. These papers, the Columbia Journalism Review said, which were attacked by Illinois Governor Pritzker as racist, as the Chicago Tribune first reported, featured multiple misleading, decontextualized, and often non-factual stories on hot-button issues in Illinois. While the papers claim to comprise honest local reporting, real data, real news, the slogan reads, they're part of a wider trend of the blurring of journalism and campaigning. NPR looked into this phenomena last year, and they noted that erosion of local news has created an opening for these newer publications, which lie dormant and then spring up at election time. They look a lot like hometown newspapers, nothing flashy, just long printed broadsheet pages with color photos and graphics, but without any real interest in local news. In addition to these newspapers, there are literally thousands of websites pretending to be newspapers and news sites. Instead, they routinely serve up right-wing hate-filled propaganda, and they go into hyperdrive in the months before elections as well. Why do we have this? Well, right-wing billionaires can buy the loyalty of Republican politicians, right? You just, pour money on them. But first you have to get them elected. So these websites and these newspapers provide the raw material that drives social media campaigns, smears opponents, and frankly twists the news in ways that can expand and get out the neoconservative, neo-fascist vote. In a separate investigative report, Columbia Journalism Review published an article titled, "As Election Looms, a Network of Mysterious Pink Slime Local News Outlets Nearly Triples in Size." They were monitoring 450 websites that pretended to be newspapers, 450 of them nationwide, and found that in the 3 months leading up to the 2020 election, that number went from 450 to over 2,100 of them. As my old hometown newspaper, the Lansing State Journal, pointed out in the months leading up to the 2020 election, quote, dozens of websites branded as local news outlets launched throughout Michigan this fall with monikers like Lansing Sun, Ann Arbor Times, Thumb Reporter, and UP Gazette, promising local news but also offering political messaging. The nearly 40 news sites present a challenge for readers navigating a digital media environment that has unlimited space for publishing stories that are hard to distinguish as journalism, advocacy, or political messaging. It's a scam. It's a scam. And by the way, this is not just happening in the United States. It's also being done by conservatives in the UK, actually even officially by the Conservative Party in the UK. An article that was published by Byline Times, a news outlet in the UK that monitors the bylines, the media. They published an article titled "Conservatives Caught Publishing Fake Newspapers Again as Party Mimics Defunct Local Outlet." And basically what had happened was there was a local newspaper that went out of business. And so just before the election, the right-wing party, the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom, started publishing that newspaper, or at least pretending to publish that newspaper, calling it by the same name, the Lincoln Chronicle, as the newspaper that had gone out of business. There's also advertising that is phony, that is all over the right-wing media. Now, what's interesting about all this, first of all, right-wingers are conditioned now, Republicans are conditioned to believe crazy stuff. Horse dewormers will cure COVID. Malaria medicine cures COVID. Pedophile rings in pizza joints. Climate change is not real. I mean, it's bizarre, this stuff that right-wing people in America have come to believe. Oh, January 6th was not an insurrection. It was just, it was a peaceful gathering. It was a protest. So these kind of things work really well with right-wingers. But interestingly, there's nothing like this on the left. I mean, think about that for a minute. Do you know of any phony news sites on the left? I mean, there's a bunch of, publications that purport to be progressive. The Nation, The New Republic, Common Dreams, Alternate, Raw Story, Democratic Underground. I mean, it's just a long list of them, right? But they're all pretty rigorous about fact-checking. When people post lies and BS, they call them on it or they take it down. So, I mean, there's literally no equivalent of this on the left. But this grift is like built in to the mindset of the right and these right-wing billionaires. They really apparently believe that the only way that they can seize and hold political power in America is by lying to people. I mean, I can't imagine, and as I said, it's all funded by right-wing billionaires, or most of it. I can't imagine George Soros or Mike Bloomberg or Tom Steyer funding a left-wing outlet that is full of lies and BS. I mean, it's just, it doesn't happen. So anyhow, get ready. Here it comes, right? We're heading into an election, and probably around July, August, September, you're going to start seeing thousands of these phony publications pretending to be newspapers popping up with lies about Democrats and wonderful stories about Republicans all over the country. Forewarned is forearmed.